Hi everyone, Harris here with iDownload Blog. So there's a lot of videos out there with tips for photography on your iPhone, and I have like a 20-minute one that is doing quite well, which you can check out. But in this video, I want to specifically talk about things to avoid doing, things to stop doing with your iPhone in photography. This won't guarantee you have a great shot, but it will hopefully prevent you from having a terrible shot, which is better than nothing. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, so starting out with number one is actually more of a fault with Apple than with you, so it makes you feel any better. It's using night mode when it's not nighttime, or using night mode when you're not trying to use night mode for photos. So night mode is a great feature that when you hold your phone very still and you have it on a dark subject, it brings in a lot more light. It's basically long exposure for your iPhone. However, Apple has a very terrible design in the camera app, at least on iOS 15, where if you're in a dark environment, it automatically pulls up night mode. And I have seen countless people when I'm traveling and just friends and family who take night mode pictures without realizing it. And you'll notice it, you press it and then it kind of takes a few seconds to actually take the shot. That's using night mode, and that's going to mean your picture is going to be incredibly blurry because it wants your subject to stay exactly still. But if they're moving, it's going to be a very blurry shot. So number one, just stop using night mode. But if you ever see night mode pop up, just click the little night mode button at the very top. It'll cancel that, and that way you can take a normal photo. So night mode is an awesome feature, but it really requires a dead still iPhone. Handheld is a little difficult, but it also requires a very still subject, like a night sky or just a parked car. Number two, in a similar vein, I think a lot of people use portrait mode not totally correctly. So portrait mode is awesome. So the first kind of flaw I have with people, the mistake they use is not using portrait mode. So for me, if someone asks me to take a picture of them, I'm going to take a couple normal pictures because those are kind of rapid shots. You take it and the picture's taken. But then I'll also take one or two portrait pictures because they look so good and everyone wants a good portrait mode picture of them. I mean, it's an awesome looking shot. So when someone asks you to take a picture of them, I would take a couple normal and a couple portrait. But if you take portrait, make sure to tell them, hey, this is portrait, so you have to stand still, and it's going to take a couple more seconds to process. But then the other side of portrait mode is that you have to be careful. When it is low light outside, portrait mode pictures are not going to look as good. So you're going to want to use the flash more often than a normal photo. But remember, again, you want it to be completely still, so not a moving subject. That is not a time for portrait mode picture. And also, if it's dark out, you're probably going to want the flash more often than just a normal photo. So keep those couple features in mind with portrait mode and you'll get some great portrait shots. And this one's not going to count as another feature or another thing not to do, but in a similar vein, try not to use flash with a moving subject, or if you're doing flash, make sure they're staying still, because a lot of times when you're taking a flash picture, it wants several seconds of kind of stillness so that it can put together multiple exposures together to get a really good shot. But if you're moving all over the place, you're going to get kind of a funny looking picture. So when you're taking flash photos, try to stay still, try to tell your subject to be still, and just be a little bit more patient than just a normal click photo, and you should be good with some nice portrait shots. All right, up next is poor composition. So this can mean a lot of different things, and you could study composition for your entire life. There's the leading lines, there's rule of thirds, and there's just basic shots when you are taking photos. So one thing that you want to do is probably turn on the grid. And turning on the grid in your camera settings might not give you the perfect shot, but it will at least prevent you from taking egregiously unbalanced shots. So you'll generally want to strive for symmetry in your shots, and this can be especially important if you have something like a horizon in the background. That's really easy to level off your shot with that horizon, or trees or pillars, or if you're taking a picture of a church or a beautiful building, using those symmetry lines and those rule of thirds and the grid to not get a shot that's sideways, that's tilted, or that just doesn't have good composition. So using this can really help you to get a more balanced and well-composed shot, or at least prevent you from taking one that just looks really disproportionate and awkward. Number four, zooming in instead of moving closer. So if you can, and it doesn't diminish the shot, and you're physically able to get closer, that is always better than zooming in on your shot, because when you zoom in, you lose quality. Now, certain iPhones, not my iPhone mini, but certain iPhones do now have the zoom, the 2x or the 3x zoom. Actually, that feature goes back to, the iPhone 7 Plus, I think. So the zoom feature on the iPhone has gone back a while, and if you have the 2x or 3x zoom on your camera, go for it. That's really handy. But if you don't and you're just pinching and zooming, your photo is going to get worse. It's basically the same as taking a picture, cropping it, and zooming in afterwards. So if you can move closer to your subject, you're going to get a better looking, more detailed shot and just all around a better image. But on top of that, you know how you have the ability to zoom from 0.5x up to 3, 6, 10x? Well, keep in mind that the solid numbers with the 0.5 and the 1x on my iPhone 13 mini, for instance, or the 1x, 3x on an iPhone 13 Pro, for instance, those are going to give you the best shots. If you go to 3.1, all of a sudden you're using the optical, the hardware zoom that's going to give you a good shot, but then that 0.1 is using the software zoom. So that's not going to help anything. If you can, stick to the whole numbers, such as the 0.5, the 1, or the 3, depending on your phone. If you go to 1.5x, you're using software zoom, and that's just not going to look as good. Now, if it helps you get your shot and you don't care, go for it. But if you're trying to get the best resolution, the best clarity, try moving closer or further away depending on what you're doing, or just rely on the whole number zoom that you get with certain cameras. And finally, when you need to rely on it, set your own focus and your own exposure for a shot. The iPhone does a really good job of auto-focusing and auto-exposing shots. And I think most people at this point know that when you tap a certain area, it will focus there and not focus somewhere else, and also expose or set the lighting for that particular spot. But if there's a shot that you really need to get, you can set your own focus by, of course, tapping on that subject. But if you tap and hold, it will also lock. So I don't know how often you might need this, but if you're getting maybe a video, and this kind of goes outside the photography realm, but if you're getting a video and you need to stay locked on to one subject and you don't want somebody accidentally walking in the past and the focus shifting, you can tap and hold to lock in the focus, and then you can change the exposure by tapping and sliding that little icon, the little slider. But you can also slide up on the bottom and get to the exposure where you can manually adjust how light or dark your exposure is or that image is. So most of the time it's going to do a great job on its own, but there's sometimes that you just want to set your own focus and your own exposure, and maybe even lock it to make sure that the autofocus doesn't get confused. So those are 5 mistakes and 5 things to not do on your iPhone with photography. Some of those border on the things to do, not the things not to do. We're going to have to ignore that. But let me know your favorite not to do's, or the least favorite things to do, or the biggest pitfalls that you've seen with other people with their photography. The iPhone is certainly capable of getting awesome shots as long as you don't get in the way too much. But anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.